In this episode of Mike Drop Dallas, we get a Dallas Stars season preview from none other than ace defenseman Miro Heiskanen. Then we hear from Friends of Fair Park CEO Brian Luallen about an ambitious renovation project for Fair Park and the Cotton Bowl. And finally, we're joined by media and technology expert William Mao of Octagon, who predicts the future of sports media for us. We got another good one for you. So let's drop the mic and let's go. Welcome to Mike Drop Dallas, everybody. Kevin Sullivan here, joined as always by Monica Paul, the executive director of the Dallas Sports Commission, this time from the American Airlines Center, where Monica is gearing up for a very important meeting about the 2023 Women's Final Four, which of course is returning to Dallas. Also with us, of course, is Next Level Marcus Carr. Thanks for listening, everybody, and for following. If you like the mic drop, please give us a 5-star review. That would be very helpful. Monica, we're continuing season 2 here with the hot hand. Last week, Michael Johnson. This week, Dallas Stars standout Jason Robertson. We're off to a roaring start here in season 2. So what are you up to at the Sports Commission?
Well, it's been a busy week this week. We've got the NCAA women's staff in town. So gearing up for our monthly meetings, really, for our Women's Final Four in April 2023. So that's been exciting. A lot of movement, a lot of kind of decision making happening this month. Should really be able to jumpstart some things for October. You'll start to see some community events that we'll be announcing as we just continue our planning process. And doubly important for us in that we are also in a bid process for Women's Final Four for 2028 to 2031, not only on the women's side, but on the men's side as well. So we're kind of working in tandem as we're planning this one, working on our bid pitches and presentations that we have to do later in October and in November to those respective basketball committees. So a lot going on there. We had a great meeting in terms of World Cup preparation and kind of next steps for what our host committee looks like. So we'll start to put that in motion here over the next 2 to 3 weeks. So a lot of good stuff happening. And, you know, it is football season, Sully. So a lot of football coming up, and State Fair of Texas opening here at September 30th out at Fair Park. So I'm quite excited because our offices are out at Fair Park. So we'll be stepping outside to enjoy some of those Fletcher's Corny Dogs and some of those other prized fried foods.
We're going to be discussing all of that with Brian Luallen here shortly. And by the way, I'll be out there. I'm probably multiple times this year to the State Fair, but for sure on October 9th to see Lucinda Williams at the Chevrolet main stage. I'm fired up about that. You also had the opportunity last night to attend the gala of our good friend and friend of Mike Drop Dallas, Nancy Lieberman. Tell us about that.
Oh, yeah. Nancy does it well every year. It's kind of shifted the dates this year. Normally is in February, but her Nancy Lieberman Dream Ball Gala was last night at the Factory in Deep Ellum. Fantastic showing. It was really to celebrate Title IX, gender equity, fantastic representation there. You know, for those of you who don't know Nancy and what she does for the communities, where she really gives back and puts up courts in underserved areas. So everything through her charities, you know, that's kind of the funnel and the way that makes it happen. So Dallas really turned out last night, and a lot of positive results there. But everyone from Julie Foudy to Martina Navratilova to Jackie Joyner-Kersee had a fantastic panel there, and other celebrities and representation from all of our professional teams there in support of Nancy's charities and her endeavors. So great night last night.
Another friend of Mike Drop Dallas, of course, is Troy Aikman. He had a major mic drop moment when The Rock took to Instagram and his 337 million followers to promote Troy's 8 beer, which is kind of a healthy beer. We know Troy is a health and fitness devotee. And according to the Morning News, Troy said it was unexpected. So that is a huge deal when you get The Rock. When you have friends like The Rock touting you on Instagram. You don't need much else. So maybe we think about that for World Cup, Monica. Back in a moment with Miro Heiskanen of the Dallas Stars. And now we're pleased to be joined by Dallas Stars standout defenseman Miro Heiskanen, third-round overall pick in the 2017 NHL entry draft out of Finland. Last August, the NHL Network ranked him among the top 10 defensemen in the NHL. Back in 2020, during the Stars' run to the Stanley Cup Final, Heiskanen racked up 26 points in 27 games. This is a standout two-way player, only 23, signed an 8-year contract last year. And our own Marcus Carr, on special mic drop assignment in Cedar Park, Texas, at Stars training camp, had the chance to talk to Miro Heiskanen. Let's go to that interview.
Thanks, Sully. We're here from Stars training camp. As camp kicks off, a lot of new faces. Is there any kind of new energy now that you're back on the ice?
Oh yeah, of course. There's new energy when you get back to training camp and you start everything again. But yeah, it's a lot of new faces. It's nice to see other guys, younger guys, to come in and how they do. And yeah, it's been nice few days right now, and really looking forward to next season.
Speaking of new faces, you have a new coach. What is your early thoughts of schemes, plays, kind of getting the groove of things? What are your early impressions?
Oh yeah, it's I like a lot. Yeah, it's been good couple practice right now with the new coaches, and yeah, I like that style we want to play, and yeah, it's been good so far.
You signed an 8-year contract last year. What did the city of Dallas how big of a factor did the city of Dallas play into that, and what did you see from the Stars organization that made you want to stay long term?
No, yeah, of course it's a great city. I love that city, and of course the fans and organization been great for me, and yeah, it's that's why I want to stay long term. It's a great place to live and a great team. So yeah, that's why I wanted to stay long term.
Speaking of Dallas, what are some of the things you like to do in Dallas? Restaurants, places to visit. What is unique about Dallas?
Oh yeah, there's a lot of good restaurants, of course, and I like the weather a lot. I like the Dallas heat, so yeah, it's been nice. And of course, Fort Worth, it's pretty nice to go there, stockyards and stuff like that. So yeah, it's been really cool.
When you look at the makeup of this team, all the battle tested y'all been through, what are you looking forward to this season, and what do you think y'all can improve on?
Yeah, of course, like you said, there's been a lot of battles, and of course things we want to do again. We went to finals and lost this, so yeah, there's. But I think we have a great team and all the new coaches, new system. So I think we can go all the way, and that's our goal, to win the Stanley Cup.
What are some personal goals on the ice you're looking to improve on? What can we expect from you from this season?
Yeah, I think personal goals are I want to be better offensively and create more offense. So yeah, I think I played well defensively last year, but yeah, offense is the thing I want to improve most.
One of the pulses that came out of last season was Ottinger's play in the net. What have you seen from him? Has his focus changed as you start off this new camp?
Yeah, I think he's always really focused when he gets to the ice, and yeah, he's of course he was great for us last year, and I think he looks even better this year. So yeah, he's gonna be a huge part again for our team, and yeah, really looking forward to.
You have a lot of experience at just 23. Where do you see yourself, at the end of this season and beyond that?
No, yeah. Of course, I want to be better than I was last year, and that's my goal every year. And yeah, I want to be one of the best this year defenseman, and the best at some point. So yeah, I really try to work hard and be there at one day.
You kick off the season in just under 3 weeks. What factor does American Airlines fans play to y'all's home advantage? How big of a factor are those fans for you guys on a night-to-night basis?
Yeah, it's huge. I love our fans, and everyone does. So yeah, it's great to always play at home, and really looking forward to play in front of them.
Well, we appreciate your time today. Thanks so much. We're looking forward to a great season from you, a great season from the Stars. Back to you, Sully.
Thanks, Marcus. What did you most glean about the Stars under new coach Pete DeBoer by spending the day at training camp recently?
Yeah, Sully, I think the Stars are going to be an interesting team this year. They are usually one of those teams that flies on the radar for most of the season. And I think this year will be a little bit different. I think they're going to come out pretty strong. They want to keep the puck for long possessions rather than pushing the puck so quickly. Spreading the ice obviously is going to be a huge part. And Sagan, Ben, and Heiskanen are all going to be essential to the Stars this season. So as long as health's on their side, I think they're going to be really good.
Here on Mike Drop Dallas, we hear athletes say all the time how much Dallas means to them, how much they love playing here. I thought it was interesting that Heiskanen specifically referenced the fans and the crowd at the AAC. You actually attended your first Stars game last year, so you're new to the bandwagon. But how did that make you feel when you heard yet another player talk about why they love playing in Dallas so much?
Well, there is no environment like AAC, I would say. Like I have been to a lot of stadiums in general, maybe not NHL stadiums, but I've been to every MLB stadium. But there is really no quite environment like a Stars environment. Everybody seems so in tune together, and that seems to translate to a lot of the players that we've had. Holtby notably said the same thing about the AAC last year whenever we had him on, and it's good to see another Stars player, vouching for AAC.
Yeah, he also, the point about Dallas, he mentioned that he likes the heat. Now, this is a player from Finland. We've had a lot of players come on and say what they like about Dallas. Great place to raise a family, a lot of golf courses, great shopping, all the attributes. But he specifically called out the heat, which I don't think a guest has since Pudge Rodriguez told us that he liked playing in the heat during his Hall of Fame career with the Rangers. So I don't know what the temperature is in Finland right now, but it's probably a little cooler than it is here.
I would definitely say so, but he's as cold as ice. So I guess he's I guess it balances out for him.
Now, in addition to the Stars getting underway, of course, this week, the Mavericks open training camp. And similarly, just like we saw Heiskanen talk about winning this year and how optimistic he is for the Stars prospects under new coach Pete DeBoer, Luka came out this week at Media Day and said he expects to win a championship. That's got to get everybody fired up.
Yeah, I mean, it's good when you have two 23-year-olds, have the keys to the city pretty much, and they're both vouching for a championship year, and it looks like both teams could do it. And what a spectacle that would be for the Stars and Mavs to do that this season.
I thought it was also encouraging to see Tim Hardaway say he is more healthier than ever, that he used the offseason to really get squared away after his broken foot last year. He's ready to go. Spencer Dinwiddie, who was playing with some nagging injuries, he's ready to go. And you couldn't help but notice that, Maxi Kleba is jacked. So he skipped Eurobasket to focus on his body and getting ready for the season. I was glad to see that. So just all the way around, a lot of good news coming out of that first couple of days of Mavs training camp.
Yeah, and I'm particularly very excited to see how the addition of Christian Wood and JaVale McGee pan out. And so I think it's going to be really good for the Mavs this season. And I'm really excited. Luka has said to many Dallas media members that they don't need an extra piece, that this is a team that can win a championship. And he truly believes that.
Well, no question. Lots happening. Of course, it is football season. The Cowboys have won 2 in a row. Everybody is getting excited. And we'll be back in a moment to talk about the Cotton Bowl, the very ambitious renovation plans for Fair Park and the Cotton Bowl.
Join us for the ultimate running weekend at the 2022 BMW Dallas Marathon Festival, December 9th through the 11th. Register your corporate group or team today. 2-person half marathon relay, 5-person marathon relay, and 5K team challenge options available. Perfect for team building. Bring your company out and enjoy all the energy and excitement surrounding the BMW Dallas Marathon Festival this December. Contact groups at rundallas.com for more info.
Pleased to be joined now by Brian Luallen, the CEO of Fair Park First. He's got more than 20 years of experience in destination tourism and in forming public-private partnerships to drive that tourism. Brian, thanks for joining us here on Mike Drop Dallas.
It's great to be with you this morning.
Well, Brian's a good friend of mine, Sully, so I see him pretty on a regular basis. We exist in the same space out at Fair Park in terms of offices. So I'm very excited to hear and see what's going on at Fair Park and the possibilities of what the future may hold. So, Brian, thank you for joining us here today. Brian, probably a lot of people may not know that Fair Park first even exists. I get the same thing from a Dallas Sports Commission standpoint. They don't know who we are. So tell our listeners, what exactly is Fair Park First, and what is your mission?
It's pretty simple. We're the nonprofit organization that the city engaged back in January of 2019 to basically serve as the nonprofit umbrella organization of the entire park. For many years, this park has been heavily siloed. There really hasn't been a long-term plan. There have been a lot of ideas, but very little execution behind that. We're on team Get Stuff Done. So what we do is set that future goal and then help support all of the organizations in moving forward with it. Perhaps most known to some of your listeners would be the fact that we've helped align a pretty amazing opportunity to expand the K. Bailey Hutchinson Convention Center and also create the single largest investment ever in Fair Park, assuming voters support it on November 8th. So that's the kind of thing we do to help improve this site that means so much to so many people. It often gets talked about as a crown jewel, but it certainly hasn't been polished the way you'd expect a crown jewel to be. And it's time to kind of make that investment real for people so that this lasts for a lot longer.
So, Brian, you kind of mentioned the Brimer bill and the possibilities for Fair Park. Obviously, Brimer bill would support a major renovation to Fair Park and the buildings out there. Goes to public vote in November. We've had Brian Truby on, a friend of the pod, to talk about a lot of his projects throughout the Metroplex and throughout the world, but I know he's very integrated into the plans and the designs for what Fair Park could look like with, this Brimer bill and the funding that's attached to that. What can our listeners possibly expect or need to know in terms of what exactly could that mean, the dollar amounts and the renovations out there at Fair Park?
One, the proposition itself could deliver an estimated $300 million in investment. That's not only the single largest investment since 1936. It unlocks the door for other things we can use to improve the site and probably has a value of about $500 million for various venues around the site. And we brought on Truby and his team over at Overland Partners because he's a visionary, right? Perhaps the greatest stadium and facility designer in the world. You could rattle off a list of the best facilities, not only in the Metroplex, but also the world. And he's touched the majority. And that's pretty amazing. We just unveiled some incredible renderings of new improved spaces in the Cotton Bowl, the Coliseum, and also some of the arts and culture venues, like the exhibition halls that we anticipate perhaps being a part of the bid for World Cup in 26. We're certainly very hopeful about that. And then beyond that, this ignites Fair Park. It gives us the ability to host more events. And so when we talk about a thriving Fair Park, really, Brian is the visionary for how we get these facilities to the point where we can finally meet the demands of a 21st century program in terms of sporting events and a fan experience.
Well, definitely, it gets me excited to see the possibilities out for the Coliseum, the Automobile Centennial Building, the Cotton Bowl Stadium in itself, the ability to bring additional events, sporting events, and it's my purview. But I think definitely other festivals and things out there. Even prior to this Brimer bill, Brian, y'all have kind of unveiled a community master plan. So, and I think some of that's due to start here relatively soon, maybe at the beginning of the new year or sometime in 2023. What's that timeline looking like?
Well, we knock on wood every time we say it, but there hasn't been anything of great significance built in Fair Park since the IMAX screen for the Science Place back 34 years ago. And we're on track to break ground on a community park complex that's really been promised to our neighbors for about 45 years. But up until about a year and a half ago, when our new master plan was approved by the city, nobody could tell you with any authority where it was going to go, how big it was going to be. And this is an incredible community green space that's over 18 acres in size. It's going to also include a new parking facility. So yes, it gets better coming and going. We know that the experience in the Cotton Bowl is fantastic. Getting here and leaving sometimes is a little tough due to infrastructure. So we're addressing that too. And right now we're slated to break ground early in the new year. That's, of course, supported by permits from the city of Dallas. If you paid attention to headlines, you may know those move a little slow sometimes. So the anticipation is as soon as possible in 23, we'll be breaking ground on that project. And we're on track to deliver it right now in 24. So I think it's going to be exceptional to really improve the visitor experience, not only for our sporting guests and for the people that come here for arts and culture events and concerts, but to really meaningfully improve it for people that are really lucky to align some opportunities, like expanding the Santa Fe Trail, which is the second most used biking and walking trail in the entire city. That's going to wrap Fair Park, soften our edges, and it's going to mean that we're also a recreation and athletic space. So all of that is really part and parcel of making this campus a little bit more like some of the other World's Fair sites around the country that have perhaps thrived a little bit better than Fair Park. You know, people might think about Balboa Park in San Diego, certainly a good example, maybe Grant Park in Chicago, Forest Park in St. Louis. We're just missing some things that those parks have. And it's really what I kind of think of as the hospitality experience, those day-to-day moments of respite to separate you from what are pretty obviously just oceans of concrete here on Fair Park. We've got to move the needle on that a little bit, make it a little more inviting, knit it together in a better way with not only the community, but the city. And it's really exciting after 3 years of work to see this finally coming together. A lot of planning, a lot of effort, and a lot of incredible volunteer hours go into help making a vision like this real. And we're super excited to host more events with you, Monica, and your group, as well as, you know, the many other events we see throughout the year.
Ryan, you're talking about guest experience. What would it mean in some of the other facilities at Fair Park, the Coliseum, for example, where, you know, sports fans have probably been for events or concerts, the automobile building? How would the long-term vision here affect the other buildings, you know, that are on the Fair Park campus?
Really appreciate the question because it's important. When the city finally approved election for November 8th, the mayor talked about a back to school event where he distributed, in part with a lot of nonprofits and other city organizations, much needed back to school supplies for needy families. And it's a great event. But he talked about how the restrooms they haven't been upgraded in a really long time. They don't reflect well on Dallas. And I personally think Dallas deserves better for everything we do. But the same venues, that was the automobile building that hosts that and the car show for the State Fair of Texas. It's really probably our most active space on a year-round basis outside of the music hall. It's just falling apart. And there is significant, irreplaceable art, these incredible giant bas-relief carvings by Bordell that I'm not exaggerating when I say they will literally just fall off the wall one day without a serious intervention. And through the work of Truby's team, we're going to be able to totally stabilize that, upgrade the facilities, and really create a modern show space inside this classic Art Deco facade. And that's really incredible because it respects the past and prepares us for the future. In places like the music hall, you know, that's a great venue. We see hundreds of thousands of visitors there throughout their incredible Broadway shows, concerts, and other events. Their fly-in rigging system that allows them to host these very large Broadway shows falling to pieces. The restrooms haven't been upgraded. This is really a facility that's a lot like our convention center, and that for decades, it's been really maintained by a duct tape and Band-Aid strategy that isn't working. It's time for a pretty comprehensive redo in order to get this to the next level.
Of course, Fair Park also means football with the Cotton Bowl. We have 2 games coming up with the Fair Park Classic and the Red River Showdown. What would all of this mean for football fans attending games at the Cotton Bowl?
Well, first and foremost, I can tell you that the athletic directors at both Texas and Oklahoma University very strongly desired a new master plan for the Cotton Bowl that really addressed the visitor experience. They weren't looking for things that might perhaps generate more revenue, although that's always important to facilities like this, their experience just a little bit more. And so for them, Truby's imagined some pretty incredible improvements, including widening the historic concourses. That's really important because it's a tight facility. That's good in a way because you're very, very close to the field. Our upper bowl is about as close as the club level out at AT&T as an example. And so it's intimate, right? But the problem with that is our expectations have changed a lot since this facility was built. It's almost tripled in capacity without tripling restrooms. concessions. So the lines are really long. We know that. We know that during Texas OU, it's quite likely that it's easier to leave the stadium, go get a corny dog through that long line at Fletcher's and come back in than it is to be served inside the stadium. And that's because we just haven't been able to upgrade that facility. Now we're going to envision 3 new club spaces that afford a premium experience that we've never had. There's even an incredible design for a phase 2 that would create an all-new bunker club in the lower bowl underneath the seats that would allow for better ingress and egress during all of the events and a real premium experience with real honest-to-God restrooms on the field level. I know the teams will appreciate that as well, as much as our people will. This is really an incredible opportunity. And Truby talks about how with the right investment, if our voters support this, this is going to be an opportunity where the Cotton Bowl can compete with the experience of any facility built in the last 20 years. That's what you get when you bring, let's be honest, a rock star like Brian Truby on to work on a project. He briefed our board on it last night. They were glowing about the vision. We shared that with the Dallas Park and Rec board. It's really down to the voters. If folks turn up and say Fair Park, then I think we're going to see that come together in a pretty profound way.
Brian, I think I could go on and have lots of other questions. We could talk International Broadcast Center and, what that would mean for Fair Park and the city of Dallas for the World Cup in 2026. But really, at the end of the day, our big push here over the next month or into November is we need these city of Dallas residents to vote yes for Prop A. Am I correct?
100%. This isn't one of those referendums that you sometimes see where, yes means no and no means yes. This is a straight ahead referendum. Voting yes means that we're going to be able to make the single largest investment in Fair Park as a tourist tax. So the folks that come in from out of town that enjoy these events, they're the ones paying for this. And that's the same experience we all have when we go to other cities and we check out of a hotel and it's got 27 taxes down at the bottom. This is just going to be one of those. And what's amazing is Dallas hasn't taken advantage of this opportunity in the same way that a lot of our sister cities have around the Metroplex. And so we do see more events going to those sister cities. And I know you support those efforts, Monica, and I respect it. But, as a Dallas icon and an anchor for our tourism industry, I'd like to see us get back to a competitive state, not only here, but at our convention center as well.
Oh, well, I totally agree with you, Brian. And I really thank you for joining us today. We will obviously be supporting this Brimer bill and the possibilities, not only at Fair Park, but for the Kay Bailey Hutchinson Convention Center and what that could do to transform downtown Dallas and that central business district. So thank you for joining us today, Brian. And we will be right back with William Mao of Octagon.
Love lacrosse? Need a part-time gig? IWLCA is looking for workers to help out at the IWLCA President's Cup and IWLCA debut, November 18th through the 20th. Open positions include setup/breakdown, field marshaling, Gatorade, and hospitality. Spend your weekend with us in Dallas. Contact Rena Weiss at rweiss@elitetournaments.com to learn more. Again, that's Rena Weiss at rweiss@elitetournaments.com.
And now we are pleased to be joined by William Mao of Octagon. He has been for the past 5 years the VP of Octagon's Media Rights Consulting Division. This means he advises sports media rights holders, broadcasters, and tech companies about what's happening in the sports media space. Among other things, William previously managed sports content at Yahoo. He is an expert on the intersection of sports and digital media. Joining us from New York, he is a member of the Forbes 30 Under 30 and Sportico's Best People in Sports to Follow. You can do that at the William Mao. William, welcome to Mic Drop Dallas. Thanks for making some time for us.
Thanks, Kevin, and thanks, Monica, for having me.
So we're in the throes here for a long time now, and with the Bally Sports, the RSN conundrum where the games are not generally available via streaming. So that means Rangers and Stars fans have had a tough time seeing their favorite teams. The very first edition of Mic Drop Dallas in February of 2021, 72 or 3 episodes ago, we asked Brad Alberts, the Stars president, what's going to happen with this. We've talked to John Heidke, an RSN, longtime stalwart here. And everybody wrings their hands and they're worried and they understand the frustration of the fans, but there doesn't seem to be a solution. So, William, you're the expert here. How do you think this ends, and when will I know there's contracts that go out of ways, but what's going to happen here?
Yeah, it's a very interesting time in that particular space, because if you think about how the sort of RSN or local market TV deals were kind of conceived in their inception, it was all around this like geographical definition of a local market, whether it's 75 miles from the stadium or otherwise, that was really predicated on sort of traditional linear television distribution, right? Cable boxes and otherwise. And now you're in this world where sort of physical geography kind of doesn't hold the same anchor or walls around where your content can go. And people are on the move. You're not constantly at home and just tied to where your cable box is. And so all of those dynamics are at play here with that RSN question that you asked. And it's also just part of the problem of the fact that the distribution of that Bally's Sports channel, at least here in the Dallas Fort Worth market, continues to decline. Right? If you think about it from, let's say, 5 years ago, around 2017, to compare to where it is now, around half of the carriage, half of the ability to get distribution, and to get people even the access to watch the channel has decreased, and that's projected to continue to drop over the next couple of years by 20-25%. And so I think there's just all these dynamics that are kind of providing and pushing pressure down on that ecosystem. But at the same time, you have to remember a couple of, I guess, interesting and unique pieces of how this particular part of the sports landscape works. First of all, it's kind of a repeated game between the same two parties, right? There aren't multiple RSNs in the Dallas market for the Mavs or the Stars or the Rangers to negotiate with. It used to be called Fox Sports, now it's called Bally Sports, but it's really the same infrastructure, the same entity that you're negotiating with again and again. And then the other piece is it really helps drive the economics of these franchises. For an MLB, NBA, or NHL team, particularly on the MLB side, there are cases where it represents close to 50% of the money that comes in to help operate the team. And so it's a situation where you're interested in investing in each other's success. Otherwise, kind of the whole system starts to fall apart. And I think those are kind of a lot of the elements. I know I rattled through a lot of the different pieces of the puzzle, but it's really how those all interplay with one another, and it varies in different markets. I would say in Dallas, based on projections by parties like S&P and SNL Kagan, the Southwest Regional Sports Network, despite all the decrease in subscribers and carriage, is still operating at a positive cash flow margin, whereas in other parts of Sinclair's 21 RSNs, those RSNs, at least on an individual basis, are operating in the red already.
We saw Apple TV Plus come into baseball with a Friday night package. Of course, Amazon, huge splash with an 11-year deal with the NFL. What's next for Facebook, Google, YouTube? Peacock has a pretty successful exclusive window with Major League Baseball on Saturday morning. Will Amazon keep going? Will Apple TV Plus keep going in sports rights? What do you think happens there with the tech companies and the exclusive streamers?
Yeah, I'm a little biased, and you mentioned I think you noted I worked at Yahoo. I actually worked at YouTube about 10 years ago. In their sports partnership group. And, even back then, we were trying to test and learn with opportunistic partnerships with leagues, because sports rights are really expensive, particularly relative to general entertainment, music, and other genres of content that broadcast networks, video platforms work in more often than they do in sports. A key difference between the Facebooks, the YouTubes, and the Twitters of the world compared to an Apple or Amazon or even a Peacock is those are subscription platforms, right? You pay a monthly fee for the access to the content versus it being driven by watching ads or skipping ads or not skipping ads, as it were. And I think that's a big difference in how the models work, because you're trying to use sports as a mechanism for acquiring new customers. And then hoping that the rest of the portfolio keeps them there and continues to watch the rest of the content. And so I think if there is success with what Amazon continues to do with the NFL, Thursday Night Football. If this MLS investment with Apple and the MLB investment with Apple, if those perform well and they have a proven ability to acquire more customers for those services, then they will continue to invest in the sports space. But I think the thing that's always in the back of my head, having worked at one of these companies, is there's a lot more things that these tech companies can do with that money that can still generate value for them versus a traditional TV network or a sports network like an ESPN, or sports rights and the ability to have those games on your network is like your water or your oxygen. You need it to survive.
We talk a lot here on Mike Drop Dallas about the 2026 World Cup coming to our area, thanks to Monica and her team and the leaders in the region. So Fox and Telemundo, their deal goes through 2026. So we know that will be the broadcaster for the World Cup when it comes here in 2026. Obviously, there's global exposure. What will that mean for our area?
Yeah, I think the opportunity is less so in let's say in my world in terms of like incremental media rights driven dollars for the local market, but it is going to be all the other pieces, the kind of physical in the city, around the city opportunities around tourism and what that means for all the small businesses in the market, the ability, you're running events. And so there's going to be the need for just additional foot force to help with wayfinding and running all the things that go around those World Cup games that do end up being played, I think at AT&T Stadium, if I'm not mistaken, as being one of those primary venues. And I think what's beneficial here also is traditionally there's like certain requirements, right, that FIFA will have of the host nations and the host cities about the quality and the standards of your facilities, particularly what the stadium is and how the quality of the pitch and otherwise. You have no worries with that, right, with your facilities in the Dallas-Fort Worth market. And so you don't have to really invest incrementally to get those up to a certain standard. You can just really reap the economic benefits that will come to your city. And I heard the back end of the last conversation, it's not just like the small businesses, but it's also like if you're able to get some of that tourism tax and things for the city in general, that's what's really going to be the value of having one or more of those games in Dallas.
Well, now, William, you're getting me a little bit excited here. So I'm hoping 6 to 7 matches, but you're spot on in terms of World Cup. Kind of a two-part question here. We all know what happened during COVID. We're all at home, but sports viewerships, I think, went down. Viewership number seems to be up for college football and the NFL, some other sports too. In your opinion, are we past COVID? Are we back to normal?
I think we're getting there, right? And then during the COVID period, it was a lot of things came to the forefront. One, maybe it was the rabid sports fans still cared about sports and were tuning into whatever was on. It could have been Korean baseball coming in, piping through from Korea in the middle of the day. People were watching it, particularly when there was nothing happening. And we did see a bump and a rise in viewership when our sports started to come back. But what was happening is you had this compressed calendar, right? You had all these different leagues trying to finish out their seasons or play their seasons in formats that maybe weren't as familiar to the casual fan. So like bubbles, watching a game where there's kind of nobody in the stands is kind of a very odd experience as well. And so just the content itself was very different. And so you didn't see this, you couldn't visually see that sports was this unifying force for a community. And you had the ability to even go to a bar and watch it with other people, right? That communal aspect of it was lost. And so all of those kind of were impacting the consumption during the COVID period. But as we're starting to see now with like the NFL numbers, the stuff at the top of our sports pyramid in the United States, NFL, college football, and presumably when the NBA, NHL kick back and MLB gets into its postseason, you're going to start to see those numbers go back up.
So college football playoffs based here in DFW area. We're obviously following the expansion issues closely. With ESPN, need to find another partner. What happens there?
Well, there's been a lot of conjecture about what the economic impact, the value, the incremental will be, and some people have put out numbers like close to $2 billion in terms of its annual value. I'm maybe a little bit more conservative in that front, and my reference point is more so thinking about the value of, like, if you recall recently, the NFL expanded its playoff and had additional wildcard games. And the broadcasters paid about $75 million per additional game per season, right? And so if you think of that as a high watermark for some of these expanded CFP games, there are 8 of them. Maybe that's a $500 million incremental. So you could see the value of the current deal, which is around $470 million per year over the course of its term on average, doubling in value. I don't know if it'll really get to that $2 billion piece, but to the point you made about will there be another partner that needs to come in addition to ESPN? I think if it's ESPN, they're going to try to hold on to as much of it as possible, and they have a unique ability maybe to even really deliver that, given they have so many channels, ESPN, ESPN2, et cetera. But I think other people will want to see it at the table of Fox or even some of these tech companies. And so the real way that maybe the economic value gets really up into that stratosphere of multiple billions of dollars is if someone kind of overpays a little for that seat at the table.
Speaking of college football, William, when we saw the Big Ten do $1 billion deal, smashing all records after alluring USC and UCLA to the Big Ten. Of course, we're faced with Big 12, the conference disruption here in Dallas. With all of the disruption among the conferences and in college football, how do you imagine this ends up? Do we end up with, 2 massive conferences and everybody else is left behind? From a media standpoint, how is this going to shake out, do you think?
Yeah, I think it still remains to be seen. I think everyone has been really focused on the latest round of realignment, which realignment in and of itself is not a novel thing. It happens every decade or so based on and pegged to when TV deals come to term. But the reason everyone's kind of a little bit more heightened with the latest move is because historically it's been geographically defined in many ways. You would never have conceived that a school in California too would just decide to start playing schools that are primarily in the Midwest out into the East Coast, right? And so I think this one just feels a little different, even more different perhaps than OU and Texas moving to the SEC, because at least geographically that still has some connectivity there. I think college sports, people always ask, what are the big sports in the United States? And college athletics is this unique piece relative to the rest of the world. And it really is that next piece of the puzzle below the NFL. If you think about it from the top 100 most broadcasted, most watched events every year, 70 to 90 of them are NFL. And the only other really sports related things that make that top 100 are the top end of college athletics, March Madness on the men's basketball side and the CFP games, right? And so if you think about that just being the groundswell, that's the tide raising all the boats, I think whether it's a Power 5 becomes a Power 4, Power 3, or whatever the market decides to describe it as, college athletics itself is a rising tide.
William, this is fascinating stuff. Before we let you go, though, I'd like to ask if you could give our listeners and watchers on YouTube a recommendation for something that you may be streaming or downloading these days. Could be movie, TV, music, podcast, book. What are you consuming these days?
Sure. I think picking out one mainstream example, I think whether you're a Lord of the Rings fan or a Game of Thrones fan, you're in one of those camps. My wife and I watch the new Lord of the Rings prequel pretty religiously. I'm keeping an eye out in October when 38 at the Garden, which is the Jeremy Lin documentary that got picked up by HBO out of Tribeca, is going to be released on HBO Max on October 11th. So I will definitely be tuning in to that. And then, from a book perspective, recently, I've been working my way through some of Bill Gates' recent books around, he poses questions about like how to avoid pandemics and economic crises, water crises, environmental crises. Otherwise, he has kind of a series of those. I've been working my way through that.
Speaking of books, I just finished the Dick Ebersol's memoir, My Old Boss at NBC Sports, from Saturday night to Sunday night. And he makes a point in there. Roone Arledge told him in the early 70s, the most important thing was about production was bring the audience closer, get the audio right, new camera angles. It was all about the audience and, of course, storytelling. And Dick makes the point in the book that is true today. We may be streaming, there may be tech companies involved, but that essential element of bring the audience, bring the fan closer, and tell stories. It really is true today. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely, and I think we saw that, going back to Monica's question about the pandemic, we really saw that come to the forefront, right, during the pandemic with, for example, the Last Dance documentary, right? It wasn't, people, if you're old enough, you remember watching that series and you remember watching Michael Jordan and the Bulls, but it was really the story behind the story, the characters and the the behind the scenes piece and the storylines that are and characters that are generated off of that often are providing value here. And we're seeing it in sports, right? There's only so many games per season, and every league is trying to be a 24/7, 365 property in our market. And so whether it's things like Hard Knocks or the in-season Hard Knocks now with the NFL, right, as a prime example of that, they're really trying to be a year-round property, and that requires storytelling beyond what's going on within the white lines.
Well, William, this is great stuff. We hope to have you back again here on Mic Drop Dallas. So thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks so much, guys. You guys have a great day.
Thank you. And on behalf of Monica Paul and the Dallas Sports Commission, thanks to William for joining us and our other guests, Jason Robertson of the Dallas Stars and Brian Luallen of Fair Park First. Thanks to the Mic Drop production team, Icy Strain, Marcus Carr, and Reeves Edens of Tony Fay PR. Thanks to Ren over at Vocal Media, our showrunner, Tony Fay. Until next time, thanks for listening and watching, everybody.